The jungle was alive with whispers. Leaves trembled, not from the wind, but from something moving in the shadows. The air was thick, damp, and carried a strange metallic smell like fresh blood. John moved quietly through the undergrowth, every step placed carefully to avoid snapping a twig. He wasn't here for adventure. He wasn't here to fight. His mission was simple: collect a rare alien herb that grew only under the light of this planet's twin moons. It could save hundreds of lives back at the colony, but the jungle didn't care about his mission. Somewhere in the distance, a howl rose, long, sharp, and unnatural. John froze. He had heard that sound before in briefing reports. It was the sound of a rackhound, an 8-legged predator, fast enough to outrun a hoverbike and strong enough to crush bones with one bite. He scanned the darkness through his visor. Movement, shapes, weaving between the trees. Too far to see clearly, but close enough to feel the danger. Then it happened. A scream. High-pitched, terrified. Not a sound from any beast. This was a voice. A girl's voice. John's instincts kicked in. He dropped the herb pouch back into his bag and started moving toward the sound. His boots pressed into wet soil every step faster, heart beating hard. The scream came again, but weaker this time. He broke through a line of dense bush sand, froze in the dim moonlight. Surrounded by the twisting roots of an enormous tree lay a young alien girl. Her skin was pale silver, glowing faintly. Her hair, long and black, stuck to her face, damp with sweat. Her large eyes darted around in panic, and her delicate hands clawed at the ground as she tried to move back. She wasn't alone. 3 rackhounds circled her, their bodies low, teeth dripping with saliva. Their glowing yellow eyes locked on her. As they moved in closer, step by slow step, John's training screamed at him, "Don't engage. This is not your fight." But the look in her eyes, it was the look of someone who knew they were about to die. He tightened his grip on his rifle. He had ammo, but not enough for a drawn-out fight. He could maybe take down 2 before the third reached him. He scanned quickly. No high ground, no easy escape path. The beasts had the advantage. One of the hounds growled, low and deep, and then lunged forward. John didn't think. He acted. His rifle cracked, the shot hitting the hound in the side. It yelped, spinning away in pain. But the other 2 instantly turned toward the source, the human. The girl gasped, eyes wide, staring at him like she couldn't believe what he'd done. "Run," shouted, though he knew she probably didn't understand his language. Still, his tone was clear enough. But she didn't move. Her leg was bleeding badly. A deep gash that made running impossible. The second hound charged. John fired again, hitting it in the shoulder, but not stopping it completely. It stumbled, then got up, snarling. The third hound kept its attention on the girl, ready to strike. John's mind raced. He couldn't fight them both head-on. He reached for a flare in his belt and threw it hard to the left. It exploded in a burst of red light and smoke, making the hounds hesitate, their ears flattening from the sudden sound. John sprinted forward, grabbed the girl by the arm, and pulled her toward him. She was lighter than he expected, trembling, her breath shallow. The hounds recovered fast. Their claws dug into the ground as they started after them. John ran through tangled roots, over sharp rocks, ducking under low branches. The girl clung to him, her silver hair catching in the leaves as they passed. Her head rested against his chest, and he could feel how fast her heart was racing. The jungle seemed endless. But John spotted something up ahead, a small clearing, moonlight spilling across the grass. If he could get there, maybe he could find a place to hide. The sound of pursuit grew louder. The hounds were gaining. John burst into the clearing. Breathing hardened, stopped dead in his tracks. Standing at the far side of the clearing was the Largest rackhound he had ever seen. Its shoulders were as high as his chest, its fur black with streaks of deep red, its teeth long and curved like daggers. This wasn't just another predator. This was the alpha. The two smaller hounds flanked it, growling. The alpha's eyes locked on John, then shifted to the girl in his arms. It tilted its head, almost curious, then let out a roar that shook the air. John's rifle felt too small, too weak in his hands. He had one bullet left. The alpha stepped forward. The other hounds moved in. Closer, the girl whispered something in a language he didn't understand, but her voice was trembling, and it sounded like a prayer. John knew one thing: if he missed this shot, they were both dead. The alpha's roar still echoed through the trees. John's finger rested on the trigger, his eyes locked on the beast's glowing red gaze. He didn't breathe. He didn't blink. The girl in his arms trembled, her thin frame barely able to cling to him. The alpha took another slow step forward, its heavy paws sinking into the soft ground. The two smaller rackhounds fanned out, circling like wolves, cutting off any escape route. John's mind calculated fast three predators, one bullet. His odds were terrible. He needed a distraction. Without lowering his rifle, he reached into his belt with his free hand, fingers closing around his last flare. If he could create enough light and noise, maybe the hounds would hesitate long enough for him to run. The alpha snarled, its breath a foul mix of blood and rot. It crouched low, ready to spring. John pulled the pin and hurled the flare high into the air. It burst into a blazing ball of red fire, hissing and spitting sparks as it arced toward the treetops. The sudden light made the predators flinch, their sensitive eyes narrowing now. John muttered under his breath. He shifted the girl higher in his arms and sprinted toward the thickest part of the jungle. His boots pounded the ground, his breath coming fast. Behind him, the hounds barked and roared in confusion, but the alpha didn't stay confused for long. A chilling howl split the air. The hunt was back on. Branches whipped against John's arms and face as he pushed through, ignoring the pain. The girl's head lolled against his shoulder. She was slipping in and out of consciousness. He couldn't just run blindly. He needed. Sheltered through the dark shapes of the trees, he spotted something half hidden under vines and moss, a structure. Not natural, stone walls. Straight lines, an alien ruin. John made for it. His boots skidded on the wet ground as he reached a broken archway and ducked inside. The air was cooler here, and the stone walls rose high, blocking most of the light. He set the girl down gently against the wall. Her leg wound was bleeding badly, the silver of her blood glinting in the faint moonlight that crept through cracks in the ceiling. She winced when he touched the injury, but didn't pull away. Her large, glassy eyes met his pleading, though they didn't share a language. Outside, the sound of claws scraping stone echoed. The hounds were circling the ruin, sniffing for a way in. John quickly scanned the inside of the ruin. Broken pillars, old carvings, and chunks of rubble lay scattered around. The entrance was wide, too wide to defend for long. He needed to block it. He grabbed a fallen beam of stone and dragged it across the opening, wedging it into place. It wouldn't stop the alpha forever, but it would slow it down. The girl said something softly. Her voice was weak, but it made him pause. She tapped her leg, then pointed at his pack. She knew she was poisoned. John's chest tightened. Poison from a rackhound wasn't something you just slept off. It was fast and brutal. If it reached her heart, she'd be gone in less than an hour. He pulled out his med kit. One vial of anti-venom designed for human biology. It might help. Or it might do nothing. If he used it on her, and he got bitten later, he'd have nothing for himself. Outside, the alpha growled, the sound vibrating through the stone floor. John looked at the girl. Her breathing was shallow, her silver skin pale under the faint light. She tried to speak again, but her voice broke. He made his choice. Hold still. He whispered. He injected the serum into her arm. She flinched, her hand gripping his wrist, then let go. For a few moments, nothing happened, then her breathing steadied slightly, though she still looked weak. A loud thud shook the entrance. The alpha had found them. The beam across the doorway cracked under the impact. Dust fell from the ceiling. John stood, raising his rifle again. He had one bullet and no backup plan. The girl stirred, reaching to her side. From under the folds of her clothing, she pulled out something small metallic with faint blue lights. A weapon. Alien tech. She pressed it into his free hand and nodded. Another crash. The beam splintered. John positioned himself in front of her, ready to fire. The alpha's massive head appeared through the gap, eyes burning with hunger and rage. 4. A moment, predator and human stared at each other in complete silence. Then the alpha lunged. The alpha's head burst through the gap in the stone beam, jaws wide, teeth glinting in the dim light. Its roar filled the ruin, so loud it rattled John's bones. Dust rained from the cracked ceiling, and the air reeked of blood and wet fur. John gripped the alien weapon in one hand and his rifle in the other. His pulse hammered in his ears. He had one bullet in the rifle, his last shot. The alien device in his other hand was light, strange, and covered in markings he couldn't read. He didn't know if it even worked. The girl struggled to sit up against the wall. Her silver skin was still pale, but there was more focus in her glowing eyes now. She said something sharp in her language and motioned to the device, pointing. At the alpha's head, John got the message. The alpha slammed its body against the beam again. Crack. The stone shifted, breaking apart. Two smaller hounds appeared at its sides, snapping and snarling. John had seconds before they would all be inside. He knelt quickly beside the girl. "You'd better be right about this," he muttered, holding up the alien weapon. She reached forward, her thin fingers pressing a hidden spot on the side. The weapon hummed to life, a faint blue glow running along its edges. The alpha pushed again this time. The beam shattered, exploding in 2 pieces. The hounds poured in, claws scraping on the stone floor. John's instincts took over. He raised the alien weapon and aimed at the first hound rushing toward him. He pressed the trigger. A sharp flash of blue light burst from the barrel. Hound was thrown backward, slamming into the wall with a sickening crunch before collapsing in a heap. Dead. John blinked. The weapon worked, but he didn't have time to celebrate. The second hound leaped at him. He swung the weapon toward it, but the alpha was already moving, massive jaws opening wide. No time to fire both. John dropped the alien weapon for a split second, switched to his rifle, and aimed straight at the alpha's glowing eye. His finger squeezed the trigger. The shot echoed in the ruin. The bullet struck true right into the alpha's eye. It roared in agony, shaking its head violently, blood pouring down its face. But it wasn't dead. The wounded alpha's rage made it even. Faster, it lunged again, ignoring the pain. John barely rolled to the side, feeling its claws scrape the floor where he had just been. The second hound was still coming, snapping at his leg. John kicked it hard, buying himself a moment to grab the alien weapon again. This time, he fired. Point blank. The blue flash engulfed the hound, sending it tumbling lifeless across the floor. The alpha growled, circling him. One eye was ruined, but the other still burned with fury. It moved slowly now, more cautious, like a predator that had learned its prey could fight back. The girl called out to him, pointing to a crack in the wall behind the alpha. "Roth! Roth!" She cried, the word urgent. John glanced yes, there was a weak spot in the stone wall. If he could lure the Alpha toward it, maybe it would break through, giving them an escape. But it was a dangerous gamble. He stepped backward, making himself look like an easy target. The Alpha lowered its body, ready to charge. "Come on," John whispered. "Come get me." With a thunderous roar, the Alpha lunged. John dived sideways at the last second. The beast's massive body slammed into the weakened wall. The stone exploded outward. Moonlight flooded in through the new gap. The Alpha staggered, stunned. John didn't hesitate. He raised the alien weapon and fired straight into its chest. The blast knocked the beast back into the rubble. It collapsed with a final shuddering growl, its body still. Silence. John's chest heaved as he lowered the weapon. Dust swirled in the moonlight, and the smell of burnt fur filled the air. He turned to the girl. She was staring at him not with fear this time, but with something else. Something like respect. She spoke softly, almost a whisper, her voice carrying. A strange warmth outside, distant howls echoed through the jungle. There were more out there. John knew they couldn't stay here. He helped the girl to her feet, supporting her as they stepped through the broken wall into the open night. The jungle stretched ahead, dark and full of dangers. But somewhere out there was his camp. And maybe, just maybe, a way off this deadly planet. As they moved forward, the girl's hand tightened around his. She didn't let go. And John realized this wasn't just a rescue anymore. This was survival. Together, the jungle was quieter now, but not safe. Every shadow seemed alive. Every rustle of leaves felt like another predator closing in. The twin moons hung high above, casting silver light across the damp ground. John supported the alien girl as they moved slowly through the undergrowth. Her steps were uneven, her breath shallow. The poison was still inside her. Even though she could stand now, he could feel the tremors in her body. "How bad is it?" he asked, though he knew she couldn't understand his words. She glanced at her leg. The deep gash from the rockhound's claw still leaked faint silver blood, and the flesh around it was turning a darker shade. She didn't need to speak her eyes told him enough. Time was running out. John's own body was aching. His arms felt heavy from carrying her earlier, and his ears still rang from the Alpha's roar. But the worst part was the thought in his head, the anti-venom he had given. Her might not work. He needed to find more. Somewhere ahead, through the thick trees, he saw faint movement, soft blue lights flickering in the distance. It could be a plant, or it could be something else. On this planet, glowing didn't always mean safe. They pressed forward, pushing past vines until they reached a small clearing. In the center grew a cluster of strange plants, their leaves glowing like frost in moonlight. John recognized them immediately. Seraph blossoms. Their sap could be used to slow alien toxins. It wouldn't cure her completely, but it could give them more time. He knelt and began cutting the stems carefully. The girl stood nearby, leaning against a tree for support, her eyes scanning the jungle nervously. A sound made John freeze. It wasn't a growl. It wasn't the rustling of leaves. It was a voice. Male, deep, speaking in the same alien language as the girl. She gasped and straightened, her silver eyes wide. She called out weakly, but John grabbed her arm and pulled her back down. "We don't know who that is," he whispered. A figure emerged from the shadows, a tall alien male, dressed in dark armor with jagged edges. His eyes glowed faintly, and in his hand was a long spear tipped with some kind of crystal blade. The girl's expression shifted, hope mixed with fear. She said something quickly in her language, but the man's face stayed cold. He stepped closer, pointing the spear at John. His tone was sharp, almost accusing. John raised one hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. With the other, he held the blossoms, trying to signal that he was only helping. The alien man's eyes flicked to the girl's wound. He said something to her, and she answered, her voice trembling. The man's grip on the spear loosened slightly, but his gaze stayed fixed on John. Then, without warning, he pulled something from his belt, a small vial filled with shimmering liquid. John recognized it instantly. An alien cure, stronger than anything he had in his kit. The man held it up, then pointed the spear at John again, speaking a single word in a tone that needed no translation. Trade. John's stomach sank. The man wasn't offering it for free. He wanted something in exchange. But what? The alien gestured at John's rifle, then at the alien weapon still slung across John's back. John hesitated. Giving up both would mean walking through this deadly jungle unarmed. But without that vial, the girl might not last another hour. The man's eyes narrowed. He started to pull the vial back. John's jaw tightened. Slowly, he unhooked the alien weapon and set it on the ground, then placed the rifle beside it. He stepped back. The armored alien kicked the weapons aside and tossed the vial to John. He caught it instantly, uncorked it, and knelt by the girl. The liquid shimmered as he poured it over the wound. She gasped sharply, her body tensing. Then, relaxing. The darkened flesh began to fade back to its normal silver tone. Relief washed over John, but it didn't last. The alien man spoke to the girl one last time, then turned his cold gaze back to John. He pointed to the west, deeper into the jungle, and made a cutting motion with his hand, a warning. Then he disappeared into the shadows. John helped the girl stand again. She was stronger now. The poison slowed, but her eyes were full of worry. Whatever the man had said, it wasn't good news. John didn't need to understand the words to feel it. They were headed towards something worse than the Alpha, and whatever it was waiting for them. The jungle seemed to grow darker with every step. Even the twin moons felt dimmer here, their silver light swallowed by thick, twisting branches overhead. The air was heavy, damp, and filled with a low hum, most like the forest itself was. Breathing. John's grip tightened around the girl's hand. She was walking better now. The alien cure working through her system. But she still glanced over her shoulder every few seconds. That alien man's warning kept replaying in John's mind. He hadn't needed to know the language to understand the message. Don't go west. And yet, west was the only way toward the coordinates of his camp. They moved through thick ferns, the ground soft and wet beneath their boots. Somewhere far behind, a faint howl echoed. John stopped, listening. It wasn't the howl of a normal vrackhound. It was deeper, slower, and carried an edge of command. The girl froze. Her silver eyes widened, and she whispered a single word in her language, her voice shaking. Kruver. John didn't know the word, but the fear in her tone told him enough. This was bad. Branches cracked in the distance. A shadow moved. Between the trees, large, far larger than anything he had seen before. Then it stepped into the moonlight. It was massive. Easily twice the size of the Alpha they had fought before. Its black fur rippling with muscle. Its eyes glowing like molten gold. Its jaws were lined with jagged teeth, and a ridge of bone ran down its back like the spine of some ancient dragon. John's breath caught. That's bigger than Alpha. The beast let out a slow, rumbling growl that vibrated in John's chest. Behind it, two smaller Vrachounds appeared, scouts, probably sent ahead. The giant beast lowered its head, sniffing the air. Its gaze locked directly on them. Run, John muttered. They turned and bolted, crashing through undergrowth. The girl's bare feet were quick, despite her injury, and John pushed himself harder than he thought possible. But the thundering steps behind them told him the beast was gaining. They weaved between trees, ducked under hanging vines, and splashed through shallow water. Every few seconds, John risked a glance back each time. The monster was closer. They broke into a clearing, but instead of safety, they found a drop. The ground ended abruptly at the edge of a deep ravine, a river roaring far below. John's heart pounded. The beast was seconds away. He scanned the edge there, a fallen tree lying across the ravine like a bridge. It looked unstable, but it was their only chance. "Go," he urged, pushing the girl forward. She stepped onto the log, moving carefully. John followed close behind, the wood creaking under their weight. Halfway across, the beast reached the edge and leapt onto the log after them. The entire trunk shuddered. The girl gasped, losing her balance for a moment, but John caught her arm. He turned back. The beast was coming fast, claws digging into the wood. They couldn't outrun it. John's eyes fell on the alien weapon still strapped across his back. He swung it forward and aimed at the trunk beneath the beast. He fired. The blue blast tore into the wood, splitting it. With a deafening crack, the log gave way. The beast roared in surprise as the entire trunk collapsed, sending it plunging into the river below. The water exploded upward in a spray of foam and debris. John and the girl clung to the remaining part of the log, hearts racing. The river raged below, swallowing the monster's shadow. For a moment, John thought it was over. Then, from the depths, two glowing eyes emerged in the darkness of the water. The beast wasn't dead. It began swimming toward the bank, claws tearing through the current. John and the girl scrambled to the other side of the ravine, collapsing onto the ground. They could still hear the beast climbing out somewhere downstream. "We can't stay," John said, pulling her to her feet. They ran again, deeper into the jungle, heading for a ridge where the ground rose sharply. If they could get high enough, maybe they could lose it. But as they reached the ridge and began climbing, a sound made John's blood run cold. A low, guttural growl. Coming from above them, they looked up to see the silhouette of another massive shape waiting at the top. Two Alpha-class beasts, trapped. The growl from above rolled down the ridge like thunder. John froze, eyes darting between the two massive shadows, the soaked Alpha-class beast climbing out from the river behind them, and the even larger one blocking their path at the top. The girl's breathing quickened, her silver fingers clutching his arm. She spoke in her language, voice low and urgent, but John didn't need to understand the words. They were trapped. The higher beast stepped forward, its claws scraping against stone. Moonlight revealed thick scars across its face, one ear missing and a jawline that looked like it had been broken and healed wrong. A survivor of many fights, it sniffed the air, growled again, and began moving down toward them. Behind, the splashing stopped. The beast from the river had reached solid ground. John heard the heavy drip of water as it shook itself, spraying droplets into the cold night air. His mind raced. Fighting one was nearly impossible. Fighting two was suicide. Unless they fought each other. John's eyes scanned the ridge. At the base of the slope was a cluster of jagged rocks, coated with something dark sap. It wasn't ordinary sap. It glistened like oil, thick and sticky. And if his training memory served him right, it was flammable. He dropped his pack, dug through it quickly, and pulled out one of his last tools, a small emergency flare charge. Not as strong as a grenade, but enough to spark fire. The girl watched, realization dawning in her wide eyes. She nodded sharply, as if telling him, "Do it." The ridge beast was halfway down now, each step measured. The one from the river crept closer behind, lips curling into a snarl. John didn't wait. He pulled the flare's pin, then hurled it into the sap-covered rocks. FWOOM. Flames erupted instantly, racing up the ridge in a wall of orange and red. The heat washed over them, and sparks filled the air like angry fireflies. The ridge beast roared in rage, halting its advance. The river beast, startled, stopped in its tracks. Both predators turned toward the fire. Their eyes locked on each other through the heat haze. And just as John hoped, instinct took over. A deep guttural roar echoed from both throats. Without hesitation, the two alpha-class beasts lunged at each other, their massive bodies colliding with the force of a landslide. The jungle shook with their battle. Teeth tore into fur, claws ripped into flesh. They slammed each other against the ridge wall, snapping branches and shattering rock. John grabbed the girl's hand. Move. They ran along the edge of the flames, using the chaos as cover. Smoke stung John's eyes, and the heat made his skin burn, but he didn't slow. The girl coughed, covering her mouth with her sleeve as they pushed through the smoke. Behind them, the beasts continued their brutal fight snarls, bone-cracking impacts, and the occasional deafening roar echoing through the trees. They reached a slope leading upward, away from the fire. Climbing fast, they emerged onto a rocky plateau that overlooked the burning ridge below. From here, John could see it clearly, the two alphas locked in a deathmatch, rolling through flames. There, fur catching fire, neither backing down. The smell of burning flesh and smoke filled the night. The girl sank to her knees, exhausted, but her eyes never left the fight. She spoke softly, almost to herself. John stepped closer. We're not safe yet. As if to prove his point, one of the alphas let out a final, shuddering roar and collapsed into the fire, unmoving. The other, badly burned, but alive, stood over it, chest heaving. Its golden eyes lifted toward the plateau it had seen them. John's heart dropped. Time to go? He pulled the girl to her feet and headed toward the far side of the plateau. Ahead, a narrow trail cut between two cliffs. If they could get through it, they might finally lose the beast. A deep roar rolled across the plateau. The surviving alpha began to climb toward them, slower now, but relentless. John glanced at the alien girl. Gosh. She was limping again, but she met his gaze with fierce determination. They moved into the narrow pass, the stone walls rising high on either side. Their footsteps echoed in the tight space. Then John realized this could be their final chance to trap it. If the beast entered the pass, it would have no room to move, no way to dodge. His eyes fell on the alien weapon still strapped to his back. The last power cell. One last shot. He looked at her. When I tell you, run. Her eyes widened, but she nodded. The sound of claws on stone grew louder. The alpha entered the pass, its bulk filling the space completely. Its burned fur smoked, and its breath came in ragged, furious growls. John raised the weapon, aimed at the cliff wall above the beast's head, and fired. The shot struck the stone, and with a deafening crack, the rock above gave way. A cascade of boulders came crashing down, filling the pass in a storm of dust and rubble. When the noise settled, the alpha was gone, buried under tons of stone. John lowered the weapon, breathing hard. Fire and ash, he muttered. That's how we end it. The girl stepped beside him, her hand brushing his arm. Her lips curved in the faintest smile. For the first time that night, John allowed himself to believe they might actually make it out alive. The night air was cooler now. The smoke from the burning ridge drifted high into the twin moon sky, glowing faintly in the distance. John and the alien girl stood at the edge of the narrow pass, staring back at the pile of boulders that now sealed off the predator's path. For the first time since this nightmare began, the jungle felt quiet. John's shoulders eased, though his grip on the alien weapon remained tight. We made it, he said softly, more to himself than to her. The girl looked at him, her silver eyes glistening in the moonlight. She said something in her languaging. Short phrase, but her tone carried warmth and gratitude. She touched her chest, then lightly touched his arm. John didn't know the exact words, but he understood. "Thank you." They kept moving, this time with no rush. The ground sloped downward, leading them toward the coordinates where John had left his camp and his small emergency beacon as they walked. John noticed she was holding herself differently now, not just as someone injured, but as someone guarding a secret. Every now and then she glanced at the stars, her expression thoughtful. An hour later, the trees began to thin. John spotted the faint blue light of his beacon ahead, flashing through the darkness. His relief was short-lived because standing near it were 6 figures tall, armored and armed alien soldiers. The girl froze beside him. Her hand tightened around his sleeve. The lead soldier stepped forward. His armor shimmered faintly under the moonlight, a crest etched into the chest plate. His eyes scanned John first, then shifted to the girl and widened. He said something sharply in their language, and immediately the other straightened. One dropped to one knee in what looked like a gesture of respect. John's brow furrowed. He looked at the girl. "What's going on?" She stepped forward slowly, speaking to the soldiers in a calm, clear voice. Even without understanding the words, John could tell her tone carried authority. The lead soldier responded with a deep bow. Then he turned to John and spoke in halting, accented English. "You saved our princess." John blinked. "Princess," the soldier nodded. "Daughter of the High Counselor. Missing? 3 moons. We searched many worlds, found nothing, until now." John turned to her. She was watching him with a small, almost shy smile. For the first time, he noticed the delicate gold marking, hidden beneath the edge of her collar, a royal seal. "You could have told me," John said quietly. She tilted her head, her eyes soft. "You would still help if I am princess." Her English was broken, but her meaning was clear. She hadn't wanted his help to be because of her status. John gave a short laugh. "Yeah, I would have helped either way." The soldiers moved closer, offering her a protective escort, but she raised her hand, stopping them. She walked back to John, standing close enough that he could see the faint shimmer of her silver skin under the moonlight. "You, human," she said slowly. "You fight for me, risk life. I remember." He gave a small nod. "Just glad you're alive." The lead soldier stepped forward again. "The High Counselor will reward you greatly for this. Credits, weapons, anything you ask." John shook his head. "I don't need payment. Just make sure she's safe." The girl's eyes softened, but there was something else there, to reluctance. She didn't want to leave. One of the soldiers activated a small device on his wrist. A beam of light shot upward, splitting the night sky. A few moments later, the deep hum of an approaching ship filled the air. The wind stirred as the sleek, alien craft descended into the clearing, its metallic hull reflecting the moons. John took a step back. The girl hesitated, then suddenly reached forward, taking his hand in both of hers. Her grip was warm, firm. "You come back," she said. "Promise." He held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. "Promise." The soldiers led her toward the ship. Before boarding, she turned one last time, her eyes locking with his. Then she was gone, the hatch ceiling behind her. The craft lifted off, rising into the sky until it became a streak of silver light against the darkness. The jungle was silent again. John stood alone by his beacon, the soft pulse of its light the only movement in the clearing. His body was aching, his clothes torn, but there was a strange, unexpected feeling in his chest, a mix of relief and something he couldn't name. He looked up at the stars, searching for the faint silver trail of the ship. "Stay safe, princess," he murmured, Then he turned toward his camp, the jungle closing around him once more. Somewhere deep down, John knew this wasn't the last time their paths would cross, and the next time, it might not be just survival.